Alrighty then, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time zone we happen to be in. My name's Michael, I'm the Dead Aussie Game, and welcome to DAG Reads, where we sit down and we read. That's what we do. It's so good to see so many people here, ready to relax and unwind with today's book. Greetings to everyone in chat. Let's see, we got Mythical Turian. I saw Schooly early up. We have Votaria. Welcome in. We got, of course, the infamous McBluff themselves. Welcome. So for those of you who don't know, I normally do TTRPGs here on the channel with a ton of Patreons, as well as just some kind of like D&D and RPG related stuff. More stuff to come as we go. But Sundays we do a little casual DAG reads. We just, chill out. We read a book. We have been working our way through the Emily Rodda's Rowan of Rin saga, which has been an epic ride. So again, when we start these we usually do like a full recap of like the entire series. So if you are behind, don't worry, you will be caught up. But it's a lot more chill. It's a lot more like, it's just a relaxing way for me to end my week. It's a really cool way for me to like get to know some of the people who just like have questions about TTRPGs, or have questions about me, or whatever, all the things. I think today might actually bring us to the end of the final book of Rowan of Rin. So this is very exciting as well. It is an amazing book. It is such a fun and awesome book. It has captivated my heart all over again. So this book I read when I was in high school, and then obviously didn't read the rest of it because by that stage I wasn't really reading as much. But coming to it as an adult, I see just so much value and so much that I've learned about not only just the reading style, but even just the author and their journey through the whole book from start to finish. And it's been crazy. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's going to survive. In the last few books, as opposed to the first, I want to say 3, we've started to see death become like a bigger part of the story itself, and we're starting to see the author kind of bringing their audience along the journey of like loss and having to say final farewells to people and things. It was wild. It's been a whole thing. So yeah, I don't know. Just I've got a new appreciation for it. That's all. Hey, hold on a second. One moment. That's not saying what it should. Give me half a tick right here. Let's see if I can fix that. There we go. Boom. Now, for those of you who don't know, we hit our Gen Con travel goal. And actually made it. So I have got my tickets. Well, I don't have them right now, but I've got my little kiddie pool that's put aside for my tickets to Gen Con. So I will be going to Gen Con later on this year. So strap yourselves in for that wild ride. So yeah, I'll be going to Gen Con this year, in addition to the trip to Utah I've got planned at the end of this month. So, if you are in Utah, or if you are near Utah and you want to go to something cool, guys, consider going to the Convergence, which is at Evermore Park, and it features none other than my good friend Quincy from Quincy's Tavern, who's doing a live pop-up of his infamous TikTok tavern for people to go and visit. My green screen is doing the thing again, and it's being annoying. And just be good. Is that too much to ask from you? Just don't look like garbage. Is that better? Nope. I've ruined it. I've made it worse. I'm just gonna sit over here. There. Aha! Nothing wrong with my green screen now. Definitely not that. Anyway. So if you are in Utah, Evermore Park, it is the first week of May, so May, I think 2nd, 3rd-ish that week. Evermore Park is like a theme park for TTRPGs, and we're gonna be there in costume. There's gonna be a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean like there are a ton of content creators who are gonna be going to this thing. And it is going to be absolutely incredible to actually be able to perform with these people, make content, and of course run some games for some folks. So yeah, if you are in the area and stuff like that, consider going and checking out that. More details at Convergence events which I should put a link down. I'll put a link down. Hold on. But while I'm talking about that, obviously the second thing I want to talk about is our new goal. So with kindness and gratitude abound for the generosity that you guys have presented, getting me my airfare to go to Gen Con this year. First of all, just super blown away and super humbled by just how supportive you guys are of my journey as a content creator. And so I look forward to getting to see you guys who are going and getting to, like actually spend some time, like, hanging out and, meeting face to face and getting to actually, tell people how tall I am, or I'm not really. And yeah, no, it's just been, it's unbelievable. It's actually legitimately unbelievable. So yeah. Secondly, we are saving up for a new thing because one, I need gold, and I've decided that I'm going to do my first vanity goal. I've never done a vanity goal. I don't like vanity goals. Vanity goals are like, it's like this platform is for work. It's for me to do things. It's for me to do things. But you know what? I want to create content, but at the same time, I want nice and pretty things. So if chat wants to be my sugar daddies or sugar mamas, basically, I've got Baldur's Gate 3. I already have Baldur's Gate 3. I've bought it. It's there. But what I really, really want, what I want more than anything, I'll tell you what I want. What I really, really, really want. I want I want the Baldur's Gate Collector's Edition. For those of you who don't know what the Collector's Edition is, it is a collection of absolutely amazing little like bits and pieces, including let me see if I can actually pull up this this image here for you, including a statue, which I am just freaking in love with. And if I can get it, I would just be like the happiest little DAG. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. Glucose Guardian DAG, come on. Glucose Guardian? What does that mean? Glucose Guardians. There we go. Boom. All right, there it is. So this is the complete collection. Comes with some stickers, an art book, a digital copy of the game, this incredible statue. I don't know what the box is in the background. I'm hoping it's just a box, because I'd be down. Some character sheets, Magic the Gathering cards, a massive dice, a scroll of DLC content, and a little tadpole keyring for like the people who are really into the Illithid stuff, which, I mean, just saying, super into Illithids. I love Illithids, like my favorite bad guy. All right, but yeah, anyway, so that is gender neutral sugar parents. Glucose Guardians. Is that the name? I didn't know there was a name. Gender neutral Glucose Guardians. Glucose Guardians. That's yeah. They do have stickers. And I'm all about the stickers. So yes. So that is the next stretch goal. As stupid as I feel it is to ask, but kaboom, $300 is what I need to get me not only the copy but also shipped here to my place, and I will do an unboxing video and the like. In addition, once I get I'm going to do this anyway, so don't treat this as like I won't do it if I don't hit my goal. Matthew, thank you so much, you wonderful human. Yes, so don't take this as I won't do this if I don't make my goal. But once I get Baldur's Gate 3, I want to get some of my friends and actually do a playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 from start to finish. And I want us to like kind of do it as a role-playing game. Like I want us to make our characters and actually play the game as like a first-person role-playing game. I've tried a little playtest here and there with Divinity because it's a similar format. But yeah, I want to find some like actors and entertainers or even just cool people and schedule a time and just do it from start to finish. Play all of Baldur's Gate. And, like, again, try to make money off it, try to, like, turn it into, like, a regular feature on the show, kind of thing. I don't know, but, hey, I love Dungeons and Dragons, and I love the Forgotten Realms, and I love Illithids, and this has just got everything. It's all the tick boxes. All right, I think that's everything. For now, however, what say we kick into the book? So, strap yourselves in. I'm going to try and do the speed version of the recap, because these recaps are getting longer every week. Okay, so... The story of Rowan of Rin starts in the town of Rin, a small place that is nestled between a valley hidden in the shadow of a giant mountain. The river stops running by the town of Rin, and the people are worried and concerned, particularly for the Bukshah, a large group of yak-like creatures that is protected by a young boy by the name of Rowan. Now, the people of Rin are warrior people, and people like Rowan are quite frail and weak. This is seen as unfavorable for the large and strong people of Rin, so... They decide that it is not up to Rowan to try and solve this problem, but the strong and mighty. They go and see the witch Sheba in order to try and find... By myth, they go and find the witch Sheba in order to try and find a reason why the water has gone away, and the witch is pretty much just disgusted by how jock-headed most of the people of the town are, so instead places a map in the hands of Rowan, who is the only person who can read the map. Then Rowan, along with 7 others, must climb the mountain and try and find the source of the river in order to figure out what was wrong. Up there, they found a dragon, which only Rowan was able to confront, for every single one of these brave and strong people fell one at a time. Not to death, but like just gave up on their quest or were unable to overcome particular fears and challenges. And eventually Rowan was proclaimed the hero of Rin. Yay! In book number 2, we saw Rowan meeting up with the Travelers, a group of allies who knew the people of Rin from long ago, back when the people of Rin first arrived in this land as slaves to the evil Zebak, but more on them later. The Travelers are wandering nomads who are guided by these large forerunner kites that guide where they go and let people know, like sort of there's danger. One of these kite runners is very important for this book and all the others, and that is Zeal, of course. Zeal is a traveler who was adopted, who was an adopted traveler. She was actually born and raised a Zebak before she found her way to the Travelers. Anyway, more on that later. Anyway, the Travelers arrived in Rin, sensing that something may have been wrong. Something might have been, weird. But the people of Rin, when they returned from the mountain, actually found some really cool berries that they kept to themselves. They didn't want to share the information about it because they know that the Travelers like to gossip and tell people about all the new wares and all the cool things. So they were very sneaky about it. But the people of the Travelers were kind of saddened by the fact that their allies didn't want them around and weren't sort of interested in having them, in town. So they left. However, as soon as they'd left, the people of Rin suffered from a strange sleeping sickness. Rowan, along with Alan the Baker, who is a half-traveler friend who also went up the mountain, went to go chase after the Travelers, believing that they may have been the cause. But it turns out they weren't. They were actually here in search of information about their old kingdom. The Travelers weren't always wandering nomads. They once had a proud kingdom, though they do not know much about it. All that remains are the stories that they tell one another. And they learnt that the pit of Unrin, which is a large sort of gaping, again, pit, was the site of their old empire. It was then discovered that the Travelers didn't cause this problem, but the berries that they had taken down were not only the cause of the sleeping sickness, but also the fall of Unrin. You see, the berries themselves are housings for a larger carnivorous plant creature that would put everyone to sleep, raise these kind of monsters up, and then the monsters would eat the people. So quickly they hurried back to Rin in order to save the townsfolk from the one thing that they didn't realize was protecting them this whole time, and that was the things known as slip daisies, kind of like this yellow flower that grows in the bushes here. If it wasn't for the fact that Rowan and his friends brought the berries down from the mountains, they would have been fine otherwise. But lo and behold, they were able to free themselves of these horrible tree monsters. Then we find ourselves in book 3, where things aren't going easier for Rowan. Now, having saved the town of Rin twice, it is now a third time for Rowan to prove himself as a hero. You see, long ago, a third ally to the people of Rin, the Maris folk of the oceans. These are amphibious, kind of humanoid characters who have a tradition of, there are 4 tribes. one of the members of the tribe is known as the Keeper of the Crystal. This tradition is passed down from generation to generation, and the Keeper is able to control giant sea monsters in the ocean to help protect it from enemies. Whenever the Keeper perishes or is about to die, he summons for the Chooser to come and choose from candidates from the other 3 remaining tribes, and the Chooser makes the choice, and then the new Keeper is assigned, the crystal is then rejuvenated, and all is well. Well, the choosing comes, and history goes that of the 4 Maris tribes, 1, who were the choosing clan, were wiped out, but thankfully, they were wiped out by the Zebak, just as they were bringing the people of Rin to the continent. It was then chosen one of the slaves as the new sort of replacement chooser, and their descendants from there on in took on that role, which of course, as you imagine, was Rowan and his mother. They then went to the town of the Maris people. They then, Jiller, Rowan's mother, got poisoned. Rowan then had to find a cure, searched the Keeper of the Crystal's mind and found a cure, and went with the other candidates to try and create it. This, of course, was the trial, as it were, to prove who would be the worthy member of the tribes to become the new Keeper of the Crystal. Rowan made the choice, and sort of fought off a giant sea serpent, saved his mother, and once again, we have Rowan the hero. That is the end of Book 3. Book 4. Book 4 saw Rowan finally seeing some happiness. The town is well, everything's good. Rowan's mother is about to remarry because Rowan's father died before any of the books, and Rowan's mother was about to marry John of the Orchard, who was one of the stalwart allies of Rowan and one of the people who actually supported him a lot during that first book, Climbing the Mountain. However, during the celebration, Anad, Rowan's sister, was picked up and grabbed by a gracht, a giant lizard kind of monstrosity, which picked her up and flew her across the ocean to the home of the Zebak, who were the enemies of Rin. As I mentioned before, the people of Rin were originally slaves of the Zebak, so they didn't know what to do. The Zebak now had a way to attack the people of Rin, so everyone was battening down the hatches, getting ready for a war or a battle or something. Rowan alone saw that he needed to go and save his sister. So he, along with Alan the baker, who, was, one of Rowan's friends, travelers, wanted to help him out. Perlane of the Maris people, who was the guide that sort of got Rowan and his mother and took them to the Maris people in that book. And Zeal of the Travelers, the kite-flying traveler, as I mentioned before, who was originally a Zebak as well. The 4 of them set out across the ocean using the kind of prophecies of Sheba to guide them, went across the ocean to go and save Anad. There they not only encountered the Zebak city, which was covered in metal, as well as giant monsters and things like that, but they also found that there were still slaves who were related to Rowan in the land of the Zebak. They were still called the people of Rin. Except, unlike the folk of Rin, who were big, strong, stalwart individuals, and only a couple of kind of artistic and sort of cowardly individuals, it was the opposite, with most of the people who were there actually being quite artistic and stuff, and only very few of them being kind of strong and sort of muscle-headed. Sadly, only 3 remained from his tribe, and of those 3, unfortunately, during the daring escape from the city, 1 lost their life. The 2 who came back, however, were Norris and Sharan. Norris, of course, being kind of big, strong like the regular people of Rin, and Sharan being more like Rowan. They arrived, and all was supposedly, terrible, because it was learnt that the Zebak had planned an invasion by air, using those gracht as kind of a vessel to drag the army over the oceans and away from the Keeper of the Crystal's influence with the sea serpents. However, there was one thing they didn't count on, and that was the people of Rin were protected by a dragon. So upon arriving into the airspace around Rin, they were quickly driven off by a giant fire-breathing creature of death. And a lesson was very, very quickly learned for the Zebak that the island of Rin was no longer theirs to try and take. Which then brings us to the end of that book, and on to the book that we're currently in. Now, we have fought dragons, we have fought giant carnivorous plants, giant sea serpents, and even the dreaded Zebak, but there is one terror that we have not, that Rowan has faced in this book that has been harsher than any other, and that is the cold of a never-ending winter. In this book, Rowan has a duty as the keeper of the Bukshah to try and look after the Bukshah during a harsh winter, one that has gone longer than any other. Now, this has been told in history before of these long winters, and here is the information you need. Number one, the townsfolk could not stay. The majority of them decided to journey and go stay with the travelers in the Maris until the weather warms up. Number two, the Bukshah could not leave, for they are too big, too cumbersome, and they cannot survive away from the valley. So Rowan's duty is to try and keep as many of them alive through the winter as possible. Number three, the old witch Sheba is up to no good, with her providing not only a prophecy but a medallion to Rowan and telling him that he must now see as she sees. It seems as though she's kind of like trying to stage Rowan to take over as the seer or the witch of the village. But more, we haven't really learned too much about that yet. With most of the town gone, there was only one thing left. A bit of a kerfuffle happens, and let me explain why. With the winter that has held its grasp over the valley, Neil the Potter, one of the members of the town, blamed Norris and Sharon, the two people of Rin who were taken from the home of the Zebak, blamed them for the reason why the winter was here. They said that while we have lived in this valley all our lives, it is all we have known, but now since these two other people have shown up, we've started questioning that. We've started talking about our original homeland and who we are as people, but we've always been people of the mountain and people of the valley, and this is why the winter is here, because we have lost our respect and our fear of this valley. So Neil attacked Norris. Well, technically he attacked Sharon to try and destroy the silks that she carries, which has the history of the Rowan's people, right? But, Norris fought, and they got into a scuffle, and Norris's leg was injured. So Norris was no longer able to travel. So Rowan had to stay behind. Norris had to stay behind because he could no longer travel. Sharon refused to leave her brother behind, so she stayed behind. Old Land, the mayor of the town, stayed behind, along with Brondon, the furniture maker. Brondon stayed behind because, well, quite frankly, she's stubborn. She didn't want to move even for the weather, and more importantly, she was able to look after the people who were staying behind as a strong and pretty hardy woman. These 5 individuals bunkered down for the winter. However, Neil the Potter was not quite done. He set fire to the barn and was causing a whole bunch of mess when it was learned that this winter made climate absolutely perfect for ice crawlers. These things you can see on the cover of the book there. Basically, heat allergic worms that just dig through the snow and rip people apart like the creatures from Tremors. It was awful. Yeah. So Neil got grabbed, Neil got killed, and that was it. Now, with Brondon being injured by Neil before he was grabbed, she was unable to do anything about it. Old Land is kind of old and is tending to people, with both Norris and Brondon now injured. A prophecy came to Rowan, much like the ones that Sheba got, about climbing the mountain and following the Bukshah. Let me just have a quick read of this, because I will read you out the poem. Here it is. Okay, this was Rowan's first prophecy. The beasts are wiser than we know, and where they lead 4 souls must go, one to weep and one to fight, one to dream and one for flight. 4 must make their sacrifice in the realm twixt fire and ice. The hunger will not be denied. The hunger must be satisfied, and in that blast of fiery breath, the quest unites both life and death. Now, we've already seen sort of the pathways that this has taken. The Bukshah have left the valley and have gone up the mountain. Rowan has gone and followed them with Norris and Sharon. They didn't know what they meant when they said we're capable of going. Old Land was too old, and Brondon was in too critical a condition. Norris's leg was injured, but, he was insistent on going. However, upon their journey, they were joined by Zeal of the Travelers, the one who would fly the kite. Which then made 1 to weep, Sharon, 1 to fight, which was Norris, 1 to dream, which was Rowan with his visions, and 1 for flight, which was Zeal. We don't know what all the sacrifices are, but we do know a few little things here and there. We know that the 1 to weep was one of the puzzles. They went to a valley where they started to see hallucinations that drove them into a rage. While Sharan was crying, her tears turned out to be the cure, and they just sort of anointed themselves with Sharan's tears and were able to overcome their rage. One to fight during one of the encounters with the giant ice creatures. Norris was able to take a flaming torch and burn and incinerate one of them, creating a ladder to climb up to safety for one of the knights. One to dream, of course, Rowan with his prophecies, and one for flight. So already some of the pathways have been hidden or difficult to traverse, and Zeal has used her kite to kind of locate where the Bukshah have gone and keep track of them and the like. All right, which brings us to where we are currently, as our heroes have climbed the mountain through a kind of a warm forested area. Now, the creepiest section here was from last week, where these like kind of almost like spindly-legged starfish, I want to say, were attached to all the trees and stuff, and then jumped off onto and attaching to not only the Bukshah who were traveling there, but also all of the travelers as well, the guys who were there. These were blood-sucking leech-like creatures that were swelling as they attached to people, and they could not be removed. They tried burning them, they tried cutting them, it couldn't be done. But they got another riddle from Rowan, and they figured it out, that there was this very sulfurous kind of pool of water that when they covered themselves in that kind of sulfurous water, these creatures died. So they spread it on the Bukshah, they spread it on themselves, and they now have protected themselves from these creatures, making their way past, through, and around with the Bukshah through the forest and out towards the mountain's western side. Here they have finally arrived at a very familiar scene where below where they are traveling now, they see the Pit of Unrin, the old home of the ancient travelers. And that, at last, is where we're going to be continuing our story. Now, we do take breaks between chapters, so if you do have questions about the book, about life, about whatever, we will chat between sections. So, thank you for your patience. The recaps are getting real, but this might be the last one, so there you go. All right. Before Dawn, Chapter 18. Sharan cowered a little closer to Norris. What is the Pit of Unrin? She stammered. She had heard many tales since arriving in Rin, but not this one. No one spoke willingly of the Pit of Unrin. Rowan moistened his lips. It is a place of doom. A dead valley filled with flesh-eating trees, he said. Once it was known as the Valley of Gold. A great people lived there, ancient allies of the travelers in the Maris. The Valley of Gold? Norris exclaimed. Okay, yeah. The Valley of Gold, exclaimed Norris. But that was the place Timon and Neil the Potter spoke of at the meeting. The place, the people who turned their backs on the mountain and caused the first cold time. The air seemed to darken. A small, cruel wind blew about them, nipping at their faces, tugging at the torches of the flames, tweaking the shaggy hair of the Bukshah who were wandering among the rocks like lost souls pouring at the ground. We've arrived, Rowan thought suddenly. This is the journey's end. The cold time happened in the land's earliest days, Zeal said slowly. The people of the Valley of Gold live on in peace and plenty long, long after it ended. Then suddenly, they were no more. For centuries it was not known what had happened to them. Now we know that the devil trees overtook the valley and killed them all. Ogden, who is the leader of the travelers, Ogden thinks that the tree roots then undermined this part of the mountain, causing the cliff from above to crumble and partly fall. How could a whole people, rich and happy, just disappear? Murmured Sharan, staring down at the blackness below. Did they not call for aid? Did the travelers not? The travelers were far away, Zeal said, her face somber. They had made camp on the coast near the Maris for the cold season, as always. The first winds of winter brought the Zebak invasion. The travelers fought alongside the Maris people to defend the land, but the Zebak were many and the Maris were weak and divided, for their leader, the Keeper of the Crystal, was dying at the time. Urgent word was not sent to the Valley of Gold. The Valley people had never failed to answer a call to arms. But this time they did not come, Norris leaning forward, fascinated by the tale of battle. Zeal shook her head. They did not come, and the traveler's messenger never returned. It is thought the messengers died of the cold before reaching their goal. The snow was early and plentiful that year. She turned away to look at the Bukshah. Rowan did not prompt her. Zeal had no relish for tales of war, though she pretended otherwise. The seemingly endless battle between her natural and adopted people causes her much grief. Norris had no such fine feelings. So what happened then? He demanded. Go on, Zeal. The beasts are resting, it seems, or cannot decide which way to go at least. What else have we to do but to talk? Zeal looked back at him and smiled wearily as she saw he would not give her no peace until the story had been finished. The city of the Maris quickly fell to the enemy, and the Maris people were forced to flee into the tunnels beneath the sea where their leader would still protect them, she said quietly. The Zebak tried to take the travelers as slaves, but the tribes slipped out of their clutches like shadows and escaped to going into hiding in the north. She grimaced to herself. We can only guess what happened then, for neither Maris nor traveler were there to see it. But when the travelers returned to Maris in the spring, they found many of the Zebak's ships had already been sent home, loaded with loot from the Maris goods. No doubt the city was stripped bare. The Zebak who remained thought that the war had been won. She shook her head at their folly. The travelers, of course, the struggle had only just begun. They sent fresh messengers to the Valley of Gold and began to harry the enemy in any way they could. Ambushes, raids, theft of food and arms, disturbances night after night. At this point, she had all of her companions at full attention now. Sharan was listening to the story as intently as Rowan and Norris were. Starved of food and sleep, menaced by an enemy they could not see, the Zebak were soon jumping at their own shadow, Zeal went on. Then, what the travelers had been waiting for took place. The old, weak keeper died, and a new keeper took his place, and the magic crystal of the Maris flamed anew. The Maris people came up from the tunnels, united and filled with new hope. By this time the Zebak were no match for them, and so at last the enemy was defeated and driven away. She frowned, looking down over the bleak slopes that disappeared into the blackness. But amidst the rejoicing, the new messengers returned from the center, and triumph turned to sorrow as they told them what they had found. Above the Valley of Gold, the face of the mountain had changed to a mass of rubble, as if two giants had battled there, and the valley had gone. In its place was the horror later named the Pit of Unrin, a shadowed mass of hideous trees that seemed to breathe evil, and the people of the valley having vanished from the earth. Rowan gave a great sigh. He had heard the story many times before, but never like this. Somehow Zeal's flat, matter-of-fact voice made the details of the tale stand out as Ogden's colorful and dramatic resonance never could. Sharan put his thoughts to words. Chance truly played a fearful part in that history, she said. If the Zebak had attacked a few weeks earlier, if the snows had not come sooner than expected, if the messengers had reached the Valley of Gold, the valley people would have gone to the coast to fight, and would not have been killed by the devil trees. They might have been killed by the Zebak instead, Norris said grimly. Who knows? There's no point in ifs, Sharan. But if there is another for you, if the people of the Valley of Gold had not died out, they could not have told us what was in store for us. They could not have told us how they made peace with the mountain at the end of the first cold time. Zeal sighed, her eyes drifting once again to the Bukshah. That knowledge is lost in the midst of time, she said. The valley people did not share it with their friends. Perhaps they were too proud or ashamed. Ogden knows many old secrets, but when I asked him of this one, he could not tell me anything. Could not tell you, or would not tell you? Rowan asked himself silently. A picture of Ogden's dark, hawk-like face floated in his mind. Ogden's face as it had always been at their first meeting. Ogden's eyes intently searching his own. Ogden, the storyteller, leader of the travelers, had been invested in Rowan from the beginning, far more interested than might have been expected by Rowan or anyone else. But why? Why had Ogden probed his mind so deeply on that first meeting, wanting to know every trivial thing about Rowan's parents, the Bukshah, and the life he led? In his heart, Rowan knew the answer. He had known it ever since the night at the cave, and now he faced it squarely. Ogden had sensed something. Sensed that... Pardon me? Sensed that, however unlikely it seemed, the puny, quaking boy before him was fated to play an important part in the story of the land they shared. The storyteller had proven a firm ally, but always it has been as if he was holding something back, some secret knowledge or suspicion he could not bring himself to voice. He had not been surprised when Rowan brought Sharan and Norris from the land of the Zebak. He seemed to have been expecting it. Only when the silks were unrolled and the people of Rin began to exclaim and wonder over them had he seemed troubled, pressing his thin lips together and turning away. Perhaps in that moment, Ogden realized that what he had been waiting for, what he had feared, had already begun. That Rowan had unknowingly set in train a series of events that would end here, Rowan thought, looking around at his companions, gazing past them to the shadowy forms of the Bukshah milling aimlessly among the rocks. End here, for good or ill. Dawn is not long away, Zeal said suddenly. Rowan swung around to look at her. There had been something in her voice. What was it? Zeal was standing stiffly, her head up as if she was scenting the air. The torch she held threw yellow light on her cheekbones, her strong, straight brows. I don't know, she says, lips barely moving. What's happening? Rowan thought desperately. What must I do? And he felt the medallion once again growing warm at his throat. His skin began to prickle, and the hideous, familiar sickness started to flood through him. No, he thought with dread. No! But he knew it was no use. He had asked his question. The thing would happen whether he willed it or not. He felt the torch drop from his numb fingers, heard Zeal's muffled exclamation as she turned to him. His mouth open. Pardon me. His lips begin to move, shaping words. When earthbound thunder greets the day, the breaking hearts will clear the way, and where the gold river flows, the hidden stairs its secret shows. As he spoke the last line, memories flooded through him, memories of a dream, a terrifying dream he had forgotten until this moment. He'd been climbing a stone stairwell towards a gaping mouth at the top, following the Bukshah. His head was spinning. He couldn't think. When had he dreamt of this? How could he have forgotten? Was this memory true or false? Wait, he told himself. Wait. Slowly the dizziness and sickness ebbed. His mind began to clear. He became aware that he was sagging against Zeal, that her arm was around him, and Norris was supporting him from the other side. Gently he pushed them away and stood on his own feet. He had remembered. The dream of the stone stairwell had come to him in the cave. The fear of being trapped, the escape from the cave, and everything that had happened since had driven from his mind. But now the memories came flooding back, dark and fearful. All the other dreams had come true in every way that mattered, so this nightmare would come true also. And soon. When earthbound thunder greets the clay. When the dragon of the mountain roared at dawn. Rowan's ears were buzzing. It was as though his head was full of bees. He dazed and stared up at the misty cliff tops. Slowly his eyes moved downwards and stopped. Was it his imagination? Or could he see a faint blur of lighter color on the cliff face? He squinted more and became more and more sure that he was right. There was something. Some mark or fault just above the place where the steep slope rock began. If he had not had the dream, he would have thought the rocks were the same as the stairs. If he had not had the dream, he would have thought that the rocks were the stairs of the rhyme. But he had had the dream, and he knew that they were not. The Bukshah could not climb these rocks. The stairs, the hidden stairs, were here somewhere, masked by shadow. The Bukshah knew it. That was why they would not move from this place. That was why they were milling about the rocks at the base of the pile, pouring at the ground. The stairway is here, and they could not find it. But at dawn the secret would be revealed. The rising sun would illuminate the rocks. The stairwell, now hidden, would be bathed in a golden river of light. It will happen, Rowan thought. I need do nothing but wait. And he felt a strange calm. Why does he not answer? The buzzing in his ears shaped itself to sudden words, and then he recognized it as Norris's voice, sharp with panic. He realized his companions had been calling him for long minutes, trying to make him speak. He turned towards the sound, and 3 anxious faces floated in the dimness: Zeal, Sharan, and Norris. Slowly he realized there was something he had to do. Before the dawn broke, before the dragon roared, before the sun exposed the stairwell, he began the last long climb to meet his destiny. It will happen, he told himself, but it doesn't need to happen to all of us. In the dream I saw no one on the stairs but myself and the Bukshah. An immense loneliness descended upon him. His chest ached. The breaking heart will clear the way. He had wondered what it meant, but now he knew. He opened his dry lips and said, "It is time for you to leave me." His voice sounds strange and croaking to his own ears. What must be done from now, I must do alone. All right, chapter 19. All right, there are, from what looks like, 24 chapters here. So we should be able to get through this today. But we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab some water real quick. Then, if you have any questions about what's happening currently, or if you have anything you want to talk about during our little, mid-read siesta, then, yeah, put it in chat. Let me know. All right, I'll be back. 2 shakes. And I'm back. All right. Looks like chat is very quiet today, which is okay. Like I said, today is a nice chill stream, which for me means that you get to just be chill. That's it. It's just a chill stream. So, if you're just listening and relaxing and doing daily things, I know some people like to listen to this stream while they're doing chores or enjoying their day, or perhaps you're celebrating a happy Easter. Whatever it is, just know that you are thought of well and fondly. All right, what say we continue then? Chapter 19, Decisions. Sharan, Norris, and Zeal protested, as Rowan knew they would. The rhyme had shaken them, but it had not shaken their will or their loyalty. Yeah, no, I feel you, Schooly Eye. He knew that there was only one way to convince them. He had to tell them of his nightmare, about the stone stairwell and the steaming, gaping mouth at the top. He shrank from it, for if they were to believe what he'd dreamt about would certainly come to pass, he would have to confess the other dreams had come true, the dreams he had kept secret this whole time. It will destroy their trust in me, he thought. The pain in his heart began to grow stronger. It'll break our friendship, but perhaps that is all to the good. Their love and loyalty bind them to me, and if those ties are cut, they will be free to leave. The return to Rin will be perilous, but they'll have water from the grove to aid them, and nothing more perilous than remaining here. You do not understand, he said loudly, breaking in on their protests. And it's because I have deceived you. The babbling voices ceased abruptly. He saw 3 startled pair of eyes staring at him and bowed his head. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. Then in a low voice confessed everything. He spoke rapidly, forcing himself to stick to the bare bones of the story. No one interrupted. I should have told you from the first, but I did not for my own selfish reasons, Rowan finished awkwardly, without raising his eyes. I wanted our friendship to stay as it had always been. I didn't want you to regard me with disgust or fear me as my people do Sheba. I have always felt a stranger among my people, and now I feel like a freak. But that is no excuse. I am sorry. There was silence. It lasted so long that Rowan half wondered whether the 3 had already moved silently away, leaving him alone. He forced himself to look up. They were standing in front of him, exactly as they had been before. Their faces were graven. Sharan had tears in her eyes. At that moment, Rowan almost wished that they had gone without a word. But then Sharan flung herself into his arms. I cannot believe you bore this burden alone all this time for our sake, Rowan, she cried. Never could I have done this. Nor I, said Norris, shaking his head and clasping Rowan's hand. Well, perhaps I could, said Zeal calmly, but I thank the heavens that I did not have to try. Stunned, Rowan stared at them. Their reaction was so different from the one he had expected that he was tongue-tied. I knew you were keeping something to yourself, Rowan, but I could not think what could be so fearful that you would need to hide it, Zeal said. That it's something I still don't quite understand, but why would anyone turn away from a good friend because he has an unexpected and very useful talent? More a curse than a talent, Rowan managed to say. Curse or talent, it matters not, said Sharan, drawing back. Drawing back so she could look at him, but still keep hold of his arms. You cannot divide a true friend into parts and say, well, this is the part I like and this is the part I will not accept. You take the package as a whole. Speaking of that, if you think you can divide the whole 4 we have become and send 3/4 of it home while you go alone, you're very much mistaken, Norris growled. Sharan nodded in agreement. I will not say I'm not afraid, she said. I am very afraid, but this does not mean I wish to turn back. But did you not hear what I said? Stammered Rowan. Aye, the dreams of the stairwell, there was dread in it and death, and I felt it too. So, Zeal said coolly, this is not your decision to take, Rowan of the Bukshah. Whether you saw us in your dream or not, Sheba's rhyme stated clearly that 4 souls must follow the beasts. She looked from Norris to Sharan, then back to Rowan. And follow them we will. Whatever the path may lead us, not for love of you, but for love of this land and everything we hold dear. And humbled, Rowan fell silent. Norris cleared his throat. Right, very well, he said briskly. Now, let's think of what we can do to help ourselves, dream or no dream. I do not relish the idea of waiting here for dawn like a helpless victim with no command over his fate. The stairway in Rowan's dream led to a gaping mouth, Zeal said. The mouth surely must be the entrance to another cave? Must it? Sharan added timidly. But hot breath was steaming. Dreams often show ordinary things in strange ways, Norris broke in. The Bukshah were also dreamlike, different from ways that reality shows them. Is that not right, Rowan? Rowan hesitated. Norris was right, of course, but Zeal was looking up at this point, squinting through the dimness. That patch of grey is the only sign of an entrance I can see on the cliff face. If we climb it now, we may learn something that'll aid us later. Sharan made a small sound of protest, but Norris agreed instantly. For him, a hard climb was preferable to waiting haplessly in the dark. Rowan remained silent. He could see that Zeal's plan was sensible, but he still felt uneasy. Perhaps I'm just unsettled because matters have been taken out of my hands, he thought. Perhaps I've grown too used to being a leader. The thought made him smile, despite his fears. I cannot possibly climb those rocks, Sharan said in a small voice. Norris snorted with laughter. Of course not, Sharan, she said. No one expects you to, Zeal. No one expects you to. Zeal and I will see what's to be seen, then come back and report to you and Rowan. Rowan felt a pang. This was all wrong. He knew it, but he could not forbid Zeal and Norris for trying what they felt they must. And neither can I wait here while they do it, he thought. I must see whatever's up there with my own eyes. If you're determined to do this, then I will go with you, he said aloud. I think I can manage the climb. But Sharan, exclaimed Norris, she cannot stay here alone. Of course I can, Sharan said. I didn't need a guard. I'll stay here and keep watch. If there any danger that threatens or the Bukshah begin to stray, I'll call you. And so it was decided. In a moment, Zeal, Norris, and Rowan were threading their way towards the rocks beneath the gold. Star tossed her head, lumbering towards Rowan as he began to climb. Star is the lead Bukshah and Rowan's favorite of the Bukshah. It seemed to him that she would have tried to stop him if she could. By the time she had reached the base of the rock pile, he was already too high for her to reach. He looked down at her. She was pawing at the rocks as though she wanted to come after him, though she could not. The rock pile was much too steep for her. She stretched up her neck and bellowed dismally as he climbed higher. Star does not like this any more than I do, Rowan thought uneasily. His foot slipped, and frantically he scrabbled to make a handhold, saving himself by miracle. Pay attention, Rowan, Zeal called from above. These rocks are treacherous, especially in the dark. You cannot climb with half your mind on something else. Rowan knew she was right. He forced everything from his mind but the task at hand and climbed on. At last they reached the top of the rock pile. The air had suddenly become much colder. Freezing mist swirled around them, and Rowan shivered as he looked at the patch of grey in the cliff face before him. It was not a place he had seen in his dreams. He did not know if he was glad or sorry. The grey area was far larger and lighter than it appeared from below, and now they could see that it was no hole at all, but a part of the cliff itself. Part of the cliff, yet not part of the cliff. It was quite unlike the dark rock that surrounded it. Norris pulled off his glove and stretched forward, touching the grey material. A look of surprise crossed his face, and he snatched his hand away. I've never felt anything like it, he exclaimed. It's rough to the touch, but far softer than rock. And it's no cold. It's only a little cooler than my fingers. Oh no. I have a feeling it's the dragon. I have a feeling that's what he's done, is he's literally poked the dragon. Norris, how could you be so foolhardy? Scolded Zeal. It's probably some sort of fungus which has grown on the rock. You have no idea what damage it may do to you. Aghast, Norris began wiping his fingers vigorously on his cloak. Zeal took out her dagger and stuck the point in the grey material. If it is a fungus, it's very thick, she said, puzzled. She pushed the knife harder, and the shining blade slid forward, sinking to the hilt. Zeal jerked back, twisting it, and a chunk of the grey material broke and fell loose to her sleeve. She shook it off hurriedly. How strange, she murmured, her eyes alive with curiosity, and again she pushed the knife back into the hole that now gaped in the grey and began scraping energetically. Leave it, Zeal, Rowan said without much hope that she would listen. He glanced down over his shoulder to where the Bukshah milled anxiously, and Sharan waited. He could pick out Star among the herd. He could see Sharan's pale face turned upwards. His stomach turned over as he realized the sky was lightening. It would soon be dawn. Zeal, he said, turning back towards the cliff. Zeal, we had better... But Zeal was not listening. She had lifted herself up so she was level with the grey material, her eye pressed against the hole she had made. As Rowan watched, she pushed herself back, her face expressionless. You'd better have a look at this, she said evenly. Rowan moved forward, but Norris was before him, eagerly putting his eye to the hole. There was a moment of silence, and Norris too pushed himself back. What is it? Rowan exclaimed. Norris was very pale. His eyes were almost black. His mouth moved as though he wanted to speak, but no sound came out, his heart thumping like a drum. Rowan flung himself forward and looked through the hole. At first, he could see nothing but a dull blue blur. The cold was so intense, it made his eyes ache and water. So much colder inside than out, he thought, yet the grey barrier not cold itself. It came to him slowly that the grey material was like a seal, like a Bukshah skin cloak worn. It was a powerful barrier against both the heat and cold. It stopped one from flowing into the other. The grey material was filling a gap in the rock. It was used to keep the deathly cold in and the less freezing air out. But why is it here, he thought, confusedly. Who made this? Then his eyes adjusted to the strange blue light beyond the grey barrier, and he saw a huge cavern, so large that the village of Rin itself could have fitted in 4 times over. Saw that the cavern of the roof and walls were gleaming with the same white-blue fungus he remembered from his journey within the mountain years ago. Saw that the roof was studded with pale blobs that he slowly realized were blunt, chewed ends of tree roots. Saw the entrance to the other chambers, hundreds of them, and tunnels leading upwards, threading through the center of the mountains. And saw, with a trill of horror, ice creepers. Ice creepers in their tens of thousands. Ice creepers squirming through all this vast space, coiling on top of one another in a huge moving mass of white. Ice creeper building relentlessly, sliding through the tunnels with their working jaw, using chewed materials from their mouths to construct more and more of these grey cells which they already lined the cavern walls with, and rose into great towers which held up the roof. The hollow core of the mountain was a nest, a gigantic nest, and nearly every finished cell lay a white worm, a tiny replica of the adults which tended it. And in terror, Rowan saw the creature nearest to him grow still and turn a blind head towards him, opening its jaw and hurling itself hissing at the spy hole. End of chapter 19. All right. I'm digging this. All right, I'm going to try and fix that. That's just bugging me. Hold on. Okay. Apologies while I do this. Also, if anyone has any questions, please let me know, as we will answer them. Any thoughts, any feelings? Okay. All right. Nope. Okay. I need somewhere between A and B. This is terrifying? That's terrifying. It is terrifying. All right, hold on. Okay, it's almost there. Yeah, I don't know why my my stuff is like being all weird and stuff, but I will attempt to fix it. Okay. Almost there. Also, how are you, Creative Garden? I hope you're doing well. It's looking good. Nearly there. Okay. And one last tiny adjustment. If I can only fix my shoulder, that'd be awesome. Woke up to the ice creepers. Nice. Okay. Okay. Just need to... See, that's the only thing I need to fix, and I don't know how to fix it. Just behave. That's all I need. Just you need to behave. Is that too much to ask? Huh? Is it too much? Alright. Good. Thank you, frickin' thing. Okay. What even? What is this? I didn't even adjust you. Come back here, you. There we go. Okay. Come. Stop. Stop it. Okay. Done. I think that's it. I think that's good. Let me just check my fingers. This is kind of, can I see? So you always look in between the fingers to see how good your green screen's cut out. It's cut out okay. It's cut out decent. I've got a little bit of spillage on my body. Just the tiniest bit. know what? I think I'm good with that. I think that's the best I'm gonna get. Yeah, that's the best I'm gonna get. Done. All right. Things I have to do sometimes while live because my OCD kills me. There we go. Beautiful. All right. Done, done, done. I think. I'm just trying to look a little less gray in the face, and I don't know what that is. I think that's it, maybe. Oh, there we go. Good. Yes! Okay, don't touch anything. Hey, what's up, goblins and warlocks? What's up? I've been good, man. How are you? I hope you've been well. I've been doing good. I have been busy. I've been getting ready for my trip to America at the end of the month, which is going to be very, very exciting. I've been keeping doing goblins. Did I say goblins? I said goblets. I mean goblins and warlocks. I mean goblins and warlocks are one thing. Goblets and warlocks. I'm tripping over my words. I mean, I'd never want to hear this guy doing, you know, like, I don't know, something like a reading stream. That would be weird. But how you been? I hope you've been well. How's stuff over in your channel? Side effect of being the dead Aussie gamer. That's true. That's true. Just gray because I'm just the dead Aussie gamer. It's true. It is sad but true. Going anywhere near VA? VA is... I'm going to Utah. I don't know where VA is. Virginia. I don't know where Virginia is compared to Utah. But I'll be in Utah. Yeah, I'll be in Utah for an event known as the Convergence. I'll be at Evermore Park for about a week or so with some really cool content creators. If you happen to have the weekend, that's the East Coast. So, no, you'd be on the opposite side then. Yeah. But you know what? If you want to make the trip, I mean, hell, I'm crossing an ocean to get there, so I mean, just saying. Okay. All right. I think that is as good as I'm going to get it. Except for that shadow, which is always there, which is bugging me. Yeah, just gonna have to deal with that shadow. When is it? It is the first week of May. Hold on, let me post up the details real quick. Okay. Okay, so that is changing that. Okay, so I need to be there. That needs to be higher, but not that high. Okay. There. Okay. I don't know. You're visiting with Virginia at the moment? Ooh. That is very exciting. Okay, that is not working. That is working. Okay. So the brighter that is, the better it is, but then the more overexposed I become. So really what I need is I need more light on my backing. Yep, otherwise I gotta lose my arm, basically. Okay, I see how it is. That's perfectly fine. I figured it out. Okay, so hold on. Kaboom. Where is it? It should be over here somewhere. All right, there's the event. Posted and pasted. I really wish the green screens would stay the way they were when you set them up. Like, I wish that they just didn't change randomly for no reason. Because that is one of the toughest things that I have to deal with, is like, I know it sounds weird, right? But it's like I don't touch my settings don't move at all, so I have absolutely no idea why it's decided to spontaneously change to like mess around with all my settings. No clue, but evidently it has. And the only way to deal with it is to finically touch up all these little tiny details, which I hate doing. Because, you know, like, it'll do it again. And it's so frustrating. And there's always little things that bug me. Like the shoulders, right? Like there's little kind of like little bits here that just kind of eat itself. Bugs me. Okay. Oh, I ate away my time. I was supposed to use that time to talk to chat, and I didn't. And now I'm going to go into the next chapter. All right. But yes, Goblins and Warlock. Guys, I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for stopping by. We're doing a read-through of one of my favorite books that I have read. It is called Rowan of Rin. The series you can see kind of like up on the board there. It talks about it's kind of like a hero's journey where a young, kind of unassuming young man suddenly, sort of gets thrown into the wayside of destiny and gets to be a hero for his town, his people, and the like. It's a very, very gripping story. One of the very, very first fantasy adventures that I had the pleasure of reading as a child. So this was kind of like what I read in lieu of, say, Harry Potter, for example. I didn't actually read Harry Potter. I just kind of watched it when the movies came out. So yeah. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, I gotta stop fiddling with this. Michael, stop. Michael, stop. Mike, give it up. Give it up, Mike. Give it up, Michael. Michael, put it down. You can't get it perfect. You need to stop. You're making it worse. Okay, done. Hands off. Okay. Listening while you're editing VODs? Excellent. Good. All right. Well, enjoy the following chapter. Chapter 20, Earthbound Thunder. Rowan jerked back with such force that he almost lost his grip and fell. His companions' cries of shock and Sharan's thin, echoing screams from below rang in his ears as he clung by his fingertips to the sharp rocks. Back! He choked. They sensed me. They felt the warmer air. They are... In horror, he saw tiny cracks running like spiderwebs out from the spy hole. He saw the grey material begin to crumble as the hole grew larger and larger. Then he was scrambling downward with Zeal and Norris. Scrambling backwards, the toes of his boots scrabbling for footholds, his hands aching, rocks scraping rough, cold on his chest. But already the terrible head of an ice creeper was breaking through the grey barrier. Close that, and close that. That's distracting. Okay. Huge, ferocious, the creeper squirmed out onto the rocks and plunged after them. Freezing breath gushed from its mouth, filling the air before it with icy mist, coating the rocks with a film of snow. Down! Sharan screamed from below. Get down! Down to where it's warmer! Where are the torches? Where the grove stood not far. Rowan slipped and recovered, slipped again. His breath was aching in his throat. He clutched desperately at the rocks as he looked up. The creeper was almost upon them, its blind head striking forward, its ghastly jaws gaping. It was so large at the tip of its tail. It's so large that the tip of its tail still latched the rocks from atop the pile, even in his terror, Rowan marveled that the great barrier within the cliff already gleamed whole and smooth again. The moment that the ice creeper had fully emerged, the hole had been sealed once again beside it. So quickly, he thought, tumbling through, Rowan dazed as he found his last foothold, a cleft that would support his weight, and the perilous clamber down below. His stomach churned at the thought of the ice creepers rushing to the hole, their blunt heads stabbing at it with their mouths, spewing out this sticky grey material that would harden in moments, repairing the damage, sealing in the precious cold. It would take only a few among the tens of thousands of these creatures hiding, infesting the mountain, tunneling through its rocks, chewing the roots, building. Tens of thousands, Rowan heard himself groan aloud. Hundreds of thousands, and soon hundreds of thousands more. The creepers tunneled honeycombed through the mountain's freezing rock. The cells of their worm-like young packed the mountain's ice-bound caverns, and in the bitter chill of the cold time they would breed unceasingly, and their young would spread outward from the mountains in their millions, till every tree in the land had fallen dead, and every living thing had been destroyed. He slid down a sheet of rock, landing with a thud on a blessedly flat shoulder at its base. He took a shuddering breath. It was not so cold here, he was sure. He had moved out of the freezing air from atop the rock pile to the warm air below. He dared to glance up, and saw he was right. The ice creeper was slowing. It was swaying, hissing, clearly uncomfortable, but it was still coming. Rowan heard shouting, glanced around rapidly, and saw Norris and Zeal a little below him. They were both looking down and calling. Norris was stretching out an arm to where a flame bobbed far below, and a flame started moving upwards. Rowan realized Sharan was climbing towards them with a flaring torch clutched awkwardly in her hand. The girl's pale face, terrified, seemed to float in the dimness behind the flame. Below her loomed the Bukshah. The beasts were gathering in a tight, unmoving knot at the foot of the rock pile. Sharan must have pressed her way through them to begin this climb. And she's so afraid of them, Rowan thought. Then he almost laughed. Afraid of the Bukshah, when the rocks were hard and high, and an ice creeper which now raged above. Yet he knew none better than small fears could be as terrifying as great ones. He knew Sharan had used all his strength in this desperate effort to take her companions what they needed to survive. How easily she could have slipped and fallen. In terror, Rowan watched the wavering flames. He knew how difficult, how perilous the climb of the rock would be. And Sharan, frail and afraid, was doing everything with one hand, hampered by the torch she was carrying. Rowan! Zeal's sharp cry made him jump. Instinctively, he looked up again to where the ice creeper writhed in a cloud of icy breath. It was almost hidden by this billowing white mist, and the mist's hundreds of blue-white shapes were now coiling, slithering heavily down from the snow-capped mountain. Of course, Rowan thought humbly. How could I have thought that only one of these creatures would defend its nest? The grey door had to be sealed to keep the warm air from the entering the chamber, but higher up, where it's as cold as it is outside, there would be no need for sealed doors, and through those openings even more of these creepers began to coming in their hundreds. He began to scramble back downwards. Fear gripped him, but he gritted his teeth, fighting it back. He had to keep his mind on what he was doing, thinking only of placing his feet surely, of using his hands well. If he slipped and cracked a bone, even twisted an ankle, he was finished. A hissing sound filled his ears. A draught of freezing mist engulfed him. He gasped and choked, looking up and seeing the first ice creeper rearing directly above him, its huge snake-like body almost hidden by the white cloud. Somehow it had gained the strength to brave the warmer air on the lower part of the rock, and behind it were the others. Rowan heard himself cry out in terror. The upper part of the rock pile was covered in billowing mist, the mist crawling downward, and with it a mass of hissing blue mouths, white bodies writhing on the rocks, gleaming with black ice. They do not thrive in the cold. They cause it. The more of them there are, the colder it gets, he thought, piercing his mind like a dagger, and terrible knowledge which followed swiftly. Nowhere is truly safe from them. The ice creepers lunged blindly. Rowan jerked back with a yell, letting go of his handhold, slipping and sliding, all caution now gone. His heel struck the rock and skidded forward. The next moment, he was trapped to his waist in cleft between two rocks. Terrified, he now struggled to haul himself free. He looked up. The creeper's mouth gaped wide above him, its slanting teeth glistening as it struck down, reaching for him. There was a ferocious shout, and Rowan, dazed with fear, saw a streak of fire blaze past his head and plunge straight into the yawning lines of its blue mouth. The creeper reared back, the end of the torch still protruding from its mouth. Freezing dark blue mist gushed from its throat before it crumpled and fell. Strong arms then hauled Rowan out of the cleft, none too gently. "Make haste!" Norris roared in his ear. The mass of white coiling shapes on the rocks above them seemed to surge forward as Rowan and Norris half fell, half scrambled down. When Rowan looked over his shoulder, he could see Sharan and Zeal finishing their own panicky descent. Do not fall, he kept thinking, speaking as much to himself as to them. It was with relief when he saw the two girls sliding down the last steep to land safely amidst the Bukshah herd. Instinctively, he and Norris aimed for the same place, but when at last they reached the bottom, they found that the Bukshah had moved, and Sharan and Zeal had moved with them. They were now far at the end of the pile of rocks, the end furthest away from the grove. Zeal and Sharan were standing strangely still, the Bukshah pressed close around them. Shouting, Norris and Rowan ran to the place. The Bukshah moved aside to let them pass, closing in silently behind them. "Why are you here?" Norris panted, reaching for Sharan's side. She did not answer. She just stared at him with huge, frightened eyes. He tugged at her arm. "Do you not see? The ice creepers are coming in there, hundreds! We must get back to the grove. It's our only chance!" But as he turned, dragging Sharan with him, he found the way blocked by the Bukshah. The beast had moved to enclose the newcomers in their circle, and now stood shoulder to shoulder around them like a solid, shaggy wall. They snuffled and rumbled, nudging Rowan, Zeal, and Norris gently with their noses, as though eager to touch them, but though they did not touch Sharan, keeping back from her as if they knew she was afraid. Norris called and pushed them in vain. "Rowan!" he shouted, looking at them wildly. "Make them shift!" Rowan knew there was no hope. Star was in the center of the group, right beside him. Her small black eyes were fixed upon him, and in those eyes she could see her determination. She would not let him pass. The beasts are wiser than we know. Rowan felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. "They will not move," Zeal said. "They pushed us here, and here they intend us to stay." Her voice low, her eyes lit and fixed with intent, as though she was listening to something that only she could hear. "What is it, Zeal?" Rowan whispered. "Shh. Listen," she replied. And Rowan listened, and he heard nothing. Nothing but the beating of his own heart, Norris's heavy breathing, the slight scraping of the Bukshah hooves on the rocky ground. The moaning wind had dropped. There was an eerie stillness, as though the mountain was holding its breath. The silence seemed to press upon Rowan's eyes and ears. His teeth began to ache. His skin prickled as though a million ants were scurrying across the hairs of his arms and legs. He forced himself to look up. The creepers on the rock pile had halted. Amidst the swirling mists, their blunt heads waved uncertainly. "What?" Norris began, and choked as his voice dried in his throat. The light had changed. The sullen sky was stained red. It was dawn. High, high above them, in its peak, the dragon roared. And there, from deep within the mountain, a long, low growl like rumbling thunder. The air shimmered before Rowan's eyes. The earth seemed to tremble beneath him. Then the rocks began to fall, slowly, like a child's castle made of wooden blocks, tipped by a careless finger. The rocks toppled, crashing down upon one another, and upon the ice creepers, thrashing helplessly in their path. Faster the rocks tumbled as the mountain quaked beneath them. Faster and faster it thundered down, crashing upon the place where only a few moments ago the companions had stood, spinning over the edge of the drop to the pit of Unrun, carrying the smashed ruins bodies of the ice creepers with them. Rowan fell to his knees and pressed his head against Star's shaggy side, hiding his eyes from the sight of the world coming apart around him, trying to shield his ears from the growing thunder. But there was no escape from that sound. It was everywhere. Star's body trembled with it. The earth vibrated with it. It filled the very air he breathed. The sound. Rowan had never heard such a sound. Not from the dragon of the mountain, not from the devil trees of Unrun, not from the great serpent of the Maris. The roar of the mountain was loud and terrible, like a bellowing, burning rage. And as Rowan cowered beneath it, it rose and rose until there was a shrieking, grating groan splitting rock, and a gale of hot breath swept over him, throwing him flat to the ground. Chapter 20 finished. All right. We're going to go straight into chapter 21 because I wasted a lot of time messing around with the camera, which I still need to mess with, which I'll do with later. But, you know, like I said, I'm just going to not look at it because it's all messed up and I don't like it. I wonder if the ice creepers have wounded or killed the dragon that they need to help it. Ooh, maybe. That could be one reason. Maybe the winter's come because the dragon's dying. That could be a thing. Because life and death, the whole thing. Maybe that's what they need to do. Maybe the dragon's dying and they need to, like, help hatch a new dragon. Maybe. I'm wondering if the reason the dragon was injured in book 1... Oh, if they are the reason the dragon was injured in book 1 leading to the frozen river. Maybe. I thought it was a thorn in its foot, though. Let me go back and check that super quick. 'Cause that's a very interesting theory. And I don't want to disprove it. I want to see what it says. Here we go. It was a choking bone. Yeah, so it was a bone in his mouth. Yep. So yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was one of the bones of the creature. Either way, I don't think it was intentional. Okay. That'd be my thought. Okay. Chapter 21. The Stairwell. Rowan's head was aching. His ears were ringing. Star's nose roughly nudged his cheek. Perhaps she had nudged it more gently than many times before, trying to wake him, but now she could not wait any longer. He could hear her rumbling anxiously and pawing the ground. He opened his eyes. They watered and burned. Star loomed over him, a dark shape against a hazy sky. The terrible dawn had now faded, and it was daylight. Slowly, Rowan became aware of his surroundings. Zeal, Norris, and Sharan were stirring beside him. The other Bukshah still surrounded them all, still formed the vast living grey wall that had shielded them from the worst of the mountain's fury, but the wall was ragged and swaying now. The air was filled with rumbling and snorting. The herd was impatient to be gone. It is time, Rowan thought. He felt nothing. His mind was numb. He clambered to his feet, trying to keep his swimming head steady, clinging to Star's mane for support. But wool felt harsh under his fingers. Dimly, he remembered that it had been so ever since he was soaked in water. Then the thought drifted away. Slowly, patiently, Star led them through the restless herd. He stumbled beside her, rubbing his streaming eyes. Dazed, he moved into the open, and saw what she had brought him to see. The jagged stones that had been heaped against the cliff were now gone, tumbled away as if by a giant hand, and now Rowan could see the cliff and the slope were no longer separate, but formed one vast sheet of gleaming rock. The stairway of his dream began where the rock started to rise steeply, and he stared blankly through the haze and steam. The stairway was shining, lit by a strange yellow radiance that was not the sun. He raised his eyes. Beside the stairwell formed a great split in the rock about halfway up. It was a flow of gold, like a river, which flowed slowly out from the rock, streaming rich and thick as treacle. It ran beside the stairwell down to the gentler slopes where once the Bukshah had milled and poured the ground, and now there it spread and moved on, in a broad gleaming golden band to ooze over the edge of the drop. I'm dreaming, Rowan thought to himself, but he knew he was not. The breaking heart will clear the way. The heart of the mountain had burst through the shell of rock, revealing its secret, and now the molten gold was running like blood down the slope and into the pit of Unryn. Rowan became aware that Zeal, Norris, and Sharan were standing behind him and were seeing what he was seeing. He could feel their presence. He could hear their rapid breathing, but none said a word. He felt Star pull away from him gently, felt his hand pulled to the side like a dead thing. He saw Star lumbering towards the stairway, over the ground, splattered with cool splashes of this puddling gold, and the other Bukshah following, one by one. As the beast began to climb, Rowan's eyes cleared. He saw without surprise that they looked very much like as they had looked in his dreams, though far thinner and more wasted. Their heads were held high. Their horns were white and razor-sharp. Their shaggy coats were thick and gleaming. Their hooves shone bright with gold, and where they trod, they left golden prints behind them. We must follow the beasts. Rowan moved towards the stairs, and he also began to climb. He knew his companions were following, but he did not turn to look at them. He just moved up, one step at a time, while beside the liquid gold ran down like a stream of blood from the mountain's heart, draining from the broken rock. It was a dream that was not a dream. A dream of heat he could not feel, of a plan he could not see, of rags and wisps of memories in his mind which he still could not grasp, of dread and suffering, yearning and regret, silence and death. Only when he had passed this place where the golden river began did he look up, and there, not far beyond the patch of grey that marked the ice creeper's den, was the yawning mouth of his dream. It was the entrance to the cavern, shadowed and ghastly, wreathed in billowing steam. A broad ledge of scarred rock jutted out below it, like a vast form or deformed chin. Hi, Dave. We climbed over it, all unknowing, Rowan thought dimly. He looked from side to side at the smooth, hard skin of the mountain. Beneath us now beats the mountain's heart. Its heat, smothering beneath the rocks, slowed the ice creepers and saved us. Saved us at least for the time being, for another purpose. For this. He turned his eyes upwards again, He was nearly at the top of the stairwell. Through the wafting steam, he saw that the mouth of the rock was not quite the same as the bare gaping maw in his dream. 3 tall, jagged stones remained stuck in its base, jutting upwards like crooked black teeth. For the first time since he set foot upon these stairs, Rowan shuddered in dread. 4 must make their sacrifice. He turned and looked behind him. Zeal met his eyes calmly. "So we have arrived," she said. Behind her, almost hidden by her broad shoulders, was Sharan, breathless and wide-eyed, the battered box of silk still cradled in her arms. And behind Sharan towered Norris, his face steadfast, high above them. Further up, the snow heaped upon the cliff top, and grey patches sealed the cliff face, protecting the freezing cold kept within the nest of the ice creepers. But ahead of them, warm steam billowed from golden shadows, the realm twixt fire and ice. The Bukshah crowded on the pitted ledge, where they were bellowing and pouring the ground, some pushing the rocks. They wanted to enter the cavern, but they could not. Rowan thought that the space between these teeth, these rocks, seemed too narrow. He felt his heart lift a little. Whatever was ahead, the Bukshah at least were to be spared. Their task, at least now, was over. The companions reached the ledge and began to push their way through. Again the beasts snuffled and nudged eagerly at Rowan, Zeal, and Norris, but allowed Sharan to pass without nothing more than a glance. They do not like me," Sharan says. "They sense your fear of them," Rowan answered absent-mindedly. Then he grimaced. If the smell of fear repelled the Bukshah, why did they press so closely around him? His body was trembling with fear. His skin was prickling with it. He felt that terror must be radiating from him. He led the way to the opening. It was damp and gleaming, steam drifting within it, with faint tinges of gold. Star, who was the head of the herd and Rowan's favorite Bukshah, Star was in the center of the line of beasts trying to force an entrance. She had set her shoulders against the middle rock and was pushing hard, as if she would to flatten the fence. She had succeeded in moving it sideways a little, but thin as the Bukshah were, the space that they created was still too narrow. And never would she be able to push it inward. The cavern was a high step above a ledge. The rocks, all 3 of them, were jammed high against the step. "You cannot do it, Star," Rowan said quietly, putting his hand to her mane. "Save your strength." Star raised her heavy head to look at him, her eyes seemingly filled with anger and sadness. "You and the herd have brought us here, and that is enough," Rowan told her, his throat tightening. "Now, you must leave us to do whatever it is that need be done." Star pawed the ground, making a deep groaning sound, and again turned to push fruitlessly against the rock. "No! Go back, Star!" Rowan urged, tugging at her wool, desperate to make her understand. "Take the herd back to the grove now, and wait. There is little food in the grove, and there is water, and safety from the cold and the creepers. Perhaps after a time, if the snow melts, you can return to the valley. If we do what we must," he thought. "If we have the strength to do what we must." He rubbed his cheek against Star's mane, feeling its unfamiliar, this doesn't seem right. He rubbed his cheek against Star's mane, feeling its unfamiliar roughness against his skin. Oh, because normally it's quite silky and smooth. Makes sense. He then pushed gently past her and slipped between the rocks. The air was filled with a shadowy golden mist. He could see little through the haze. He raised his hands and found he could touch the roof with ease, and the thought of the ice creepers coiling in their freezing nest not too far above his very head. Zeal, Sharan, and Norris quickly followed through the rocky barrier behind him, crowding him as he moved forward. The Bukshah once again began to bellow. Star loudest of all, their calls echoed on and on, till the hazy air seemed thick with their mournful sound. "It's lighter ahead," Zeal breathed behind him. Rowan looked and saw it to be true. The cavern entrance was well behind them now, but instead of becoming dimmer, the strange light began to strengthen. They were walking towards a yellow glow that grew brighter with every step. And the steam was growing less. It was only a thin veil now. The walls of the tunnel, through which they moved, was now clearly visible. The roof hanging low, glistening above their heads. With the shock of recognition, Rowan saw cloaked figures walking not far ahead, walking in silence in single file, walking in dread and despair, while distant bellows of the Bukshah echoed faintly. "All is lost. We are lost. There is no escape." The figures shimmered and disappeared. Rowan felt his breath coming faster. The yellow glow was growing. Now he could see where it began. The tunnel broadened. It seemed to open to a much larger space. He knew that there they would find the source of the light and the end of this journey. His legs trembled with the part of his mind. His legs trembled with part of his mind, that part of which was still his own. He longed to stop, to throw himself against the glossy tunnel walls, cling onto them and hold himself back, but it was too late for that. He was being drawn inwards, onward by something more powerful than himself. Instead of slowing, he found himself moving faster, and all at once the dim golden light was all around him, and tremendous heat enfolded him as he saw what he had come so far to see. The roof of the cavern was low and mottled black and grey. The black walls were veined with sparkling gold, like hazy air, by radiance that steamed upwards and formed a round hole at the center of this smooth gold-veined floor. There was nothing else, nothing but heat and shadow in the corners and echoes of the Bukshah. Like one in a trance, Rowan moved to the edge of the hole and looked down into the pit so deep that his mind reeled, down into an unimaginable heat, the terrible glare of burning molten gold. Sick with dizziness, he gazed into the heart of the mountain and could not look away. His head swam, and he knew he had stopped breathing. The hunger will not be denied. The hunger will be satisfied. "Come away, Rowan. Come away from the edge." Rowan heard Sharan's voice, but he could not understand the words. Other voices were claiming his attention, voices from his memory. Neil's voice. "We have offended the mountain, and now the mountain has turned against us. If the people of the Valley of Gold hadn't died out, they could have told us how they made peace with the mountain and ended the first of the cold times. That knowledge is lost. The people of the valley did not share it. Perhaps they were too proud or too ashamed." "Ashamed," Rowan murmured. "Ashamed of what they had to do to make amends. But our people will never know. Land would not tell them, and I hoped that they would never guess." The heart of the mountain growled and waited. "What is to be done?" a steady voice asked. "If it is, I am ready." Hey, happy Easter, buddy. Thank you so much. There you go. Yeah, whether or not you celebrate Easter, happy Easter. On to chapter 22. We are going to dive straight into it, but before we do, guys, a big shout out and warm welcome to my friend DM Dave. Good to see you, buddy. I hope you are well rested. I definitely want to catch up sometime soon. I love your face. I miss you very, very much, my friend. I have been laughing at your little updates very, very heartily. So it's been good to see that you've connected to your inner joy. I'm glad that you and Raina were able to enjoy your time off. And more time off, I guess. Because I don't know when we're back, but, yeah, take all the time you need. Love your face. All right. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Maybe tomorrow morning for me / tomorrow night for you. Either or. Yeah, we'll find out. We'll get some time. Just chill. Have some snack times. Let's see. What else have I missed? May have tried to eat one of them. Yeah, that's true. The dragon may have tried to eat one of them in the first book, and maybe that's why I got bitten. Good theory. All right, we're getting close to it. Chapter 22, The Hunger. Rowan turned. Sounds great. Sounds amazing. Okay. Rowan turned. Zeal was standing behind him at the edge of the drop. She took his hand and met his gaze proudly. He saw her strength and her grace, Zebak and Traveler combined, and his heart seemed to break within him. "I am ready," she said. Norris stepped forward and took Zeal's other hand. "I too," he said. "I followed you this far, Rowan, and if I must follow you down into the depths and into eternity, I will." Rowan looked at him and saw his courage, his open, honest face, and again his heart twisted in pain. Only Shiran had not moved forward. Only Shiran had not spoken, but now she did speak, and when she did, her voice was trembling but firm. I do not believe it," Shiran said. "Shiran," Norris began, but Shiran shook her head. "The mountain is a thing of rock and earth," she said. "It is mysterious and it guards many wonders, but it requires only that we respect it. It doesn't want our love or our loyalty or fear or sacrifice. It doesn't need them. It must need something else." Rowan lifted his head, as if waking from a dream. The medallion was throbbing at his throat. He turned. Shiran was standing back from the drop, tears streaming down her cheek. "One to weep." "You are afraid, Shiran," Zeal said softly. "Of course I'm afraid," Shiran flashed back. "Anyone with sense would be afraid. But that's not why I refuse to join you in this madness. I refuse because you're wrong. Wrong!" They stared at her blankly. She stamped her foot. "Do you not have minds as well as hearts?" she demanded. "How can you think that throwing yourself into the mountain's boiling heart will cause one icicle to melt in Rin, or to stop one ice creeper from being born, or make a single flower bloom?" Rowan had turned around completely now. He took a step away from this pit. A low growl came from deep below, the rock trembling beneath their feet. "We must not wait," Zeal said faintly. "The anger is growing. There is too much heat, too much." "Rowan, the medallion," Shiran asked. "Used it." "Each of us has asked a question," Rowan said. "We had 4 answers. I fear there will be no more." But he still lifted his hand to the burning metal at his throat. It seemed to writhe under his fingers as though it were alive. He felt words rising in him. He opened his dry lips and spoke. The words came easily, and he heard them without surprise, but they were very familiar. "The beasts are wiser than we know, and where they lead, 4 souls must go. One to weep and one to fight, one to dream and one for flight. 4 must make their sacrifice in the realm twixt fire and ice. The hunger will not be denied. The hunger must be satisfied, and in that blast of fiery breath, the quest unites both life and death." He stood quietly as the words died away. He felt very tired, but that was all. "So," Zeal murmured, 4 must make their sacrifice. 4 must make their sacrifice," said Norris dully. "Here in the realm twixt fire and ice, there can be no mistake." But Rowan was listening again to a voice in his mind, Sheba's voice, saying the rhyme. He had just repeated it in the exact same way, every word, every pause, and the line that ends in sacrifice, the line that ends in fire and ice rhyme with one another, but there's a pause, a stop between them. They may be separate. I see it now, though I didn't see it before. The line about sacrifice may be linked to the line about the 4 souls that come before it. The line about fire and ice may be linked to the next lines about hunger. The rhyme reads quite differently then. Yes, Zeal said after a moment's thought. But it doesn't really change anything, does it? 4 sacrifices still have to be made. Do they? Rowan said. Or have they already been made? Sharan abandoned the silks to save me in the Vale of Horrors. Norris gave himself up as lost to save us from the ice creepers. You, Zeal, sacrificed your kite and nearly your life to save Norris. And I... He smiled wearily. I sacrificed the most precious thing I had. Your friendship and trust. To try and make you leave me and save yourself. Yes, Sharan breathed. We all made sacrifices to reach this place, and now we're here. There is something we must do before. She shuddered as the mountain then growled beneath their feet. Before the rocks burst again, Rowan thought, before the stairway falls and the Bukshah die, before this cavern becomes our tomb, it's about the hunger. It's about the hunger, Norris mumbled. The hunger! The words hung heavy between them. In the realm twixt fire and ice, the hunger cannot be denied. The hunger must be sacrificed. The hunger must be satisfied. Something flickered at the edge of Rowan's vision. He turned his head and saw movement in the shadowed corners behind Sharan. He saw the stirring of Bukshah skin cloaks on the floor, the feeble movement of delicate hands as it curved protectively around a wooden box. He saw another, a stronger hand, writing, and a bent head gleaming in the golden light. He felt thoughts, he felt words scrawled upon the page. You must know how it was when you return, and so I write these words. He then saw pictures in his mind, remembering. A picture painted on silk, a long line of people trekking away over the snow on a black-burnt path, twisted ice creepers from the mountain, the Bukshah standing together below, only the dark marks in unbroken sweeps of white. The only dark marks. The beasts are wiser than we know. Rowan drew sharp breath. The moving hand stilled. A face looked up. It was his own face. And in it he read the end of hope, the end of fear, the acceptance of what must be. The eyes stared blankly at him for a moment. Then the mouth seemed to curve into the shadow of a smile, and the head bent over the paper once more. Rowan turned away quickly, his heart thudding in his chest, his mind grappling with the astounding idea that had come to him. He saw that his companions were looking at him, fascinated, in terror, their eyes filled with questions that they were too afraid to ask. He had always dreaded the day that they would look at him like this, but no longer did that seem important. What did you see? Norris blurted out, unable to contain himself. You're staring at nothing. Was it our future? Was it, Rowan? Rowan did not answer. He didn't even hear. He was listening to the echoes of the bellowing that had never stopped, the calls of the starving Bukshah still milling at the cavern entrance. The Bukshah who had lived and died in the shadows of the mountains for as long as the travelers had wandered the lands and longer. The great wise beasts the companions had saved from death in the grove, the beasts who had led them to this place, the beasts who had snuffed and nudged them eagerly, and Zeal and Norris, but seemed to ignore Sharan. The beasts with their newly sharpened horns, gilded hooves, their glossy coats hanging thick over them, hanging over their thin, starved bodies. Hunger. Rowan looked around the cave at the smooth black floor, veined with gold, shadowed corners, gold-veined black walls. Heat, light streaming upwards from the well of fire to a low roof, mottled and grey. mottled grey. Though the walls and floors were black, he lifted his hand and touched the roof. And in that blast of fiery breath, Rowan whirled around and grasped Norris's arm. "Help me!" he gasped, and he ran with Norris, Zeal, and Sharan pounding after him, their confused questions ringing in his ears. Back through the mist they raced. The bellowing and echoes grew louder, the white light taking place of the gold, till before them were the jagged rocks, and the Bukshah heaving vainly against them. Star was at the front of the herd, raising her weary head. "Back! Star, back!" Rowan shouted. Star saw him and set his shoulders against the middle rocks, with Norris beside him. This time she obeyed. She backed away, and the other Bukshah backed with her, till the path before the rocks were clear. Then Norris heaved with all of his great strength, and Rowan, Zeal, and Sharan adding their weight to his, and the great rock loosened by the Bukshah, before long, rocked upon its base and rolled slowly away from the entrance. The Bukshah surged forward, Star at the head. The companions shrank back and flattened back against the side of the entrance. In a frantic haste, the beast pressed through one at a time, through the gap in the rocks, half leaping up the shallow step into the tunnels and breaking into a lumbering gallop. The sound of their pounding hooves was like thunder. The mist swirled like storm. Rowan, Zeal, Norris, and Sharan ran after them as they galloped towards the cavern. "Where are we going?" roared Norris. "We are doing what we should have done in the first place," Rowan roared back. "We are following the beasts. All along our part has only been to make sure they reach the cavern. It is they who are needed, not us." "But why?" Sharan shrieked. "What are they going to do?" But Rowan did not have time to answer her, for as she spoke they reached the cavern, and she saw for herself. The great beasts tossed their heads and newly sharpened horns, the horns which she had always been afraid would do what they were meant to do. She saw them sink deep into the pale patches, dotting the cavern roof, digging it out like great chunks of thick grey string. She saw the Bukshah gulping down the grey chunks ravenously, as if it were the sweetest food on earth to them, then raising their heads to tear out more. The hunger must be satisfied. The material that the ice creeper is using to seal their nests. Norris began to stare panically at the crumbs of grey lying on the floor, showering larger pieces like enormous hailstone from the roofs. "The nest is directly above us, and the cavern roof is full of blocked holes, as full of holes as a sieve. Rowan, stop these beasts. If they dig straight through into the nest, it'll be the death of us all." "This will be our salvation," Rowan said. But as sure as he was, even he held his breath as Star, with a mighty twist of her horn, ripped the last layer of grey from the huge hole above her. For an instant, the hole was nothing more than a black rock encircled by blue light. Then a hissing white horror was filling the gap from above, thrusting through, needle-sharp teeth bared, blue throat gaping. Sharan screamed and screamed again, but the echoes had not even begun when the blue mist belched from the hissing mouth. The blue throat seemed to shrivel, and the ice creeper fell back out of sight. "It's the heat!" Rowan shouted over the noise of the Bukshah and the echoes. "The creepers cannot bear it. It is death to them." And he turned to watch as one by one more holes were being cleared, and heat from the mountain's burning heart, no longer trapped within this cavern, gusted upwards in a fiery blast to warm the hidden realm that the ice creepers had held for so long and with so much labor of their own. In time, the Bukshah's feeding frenzy slowed, and the process of digging out the strange food they knew would see them through the hardest winter now settled into a steady, contented rhythm. Grey fragments littered the floor. Many holes were still blocked, but many others had been wholly or partly opened, and an icy creeper that had ventured near them had died in the hot air that gusted from below. "So our quest has united life and death indeed," said Norris with satisfaction. "Death to the creepers and life to us." "The ice creepers are not all dead," Zeal said, looking at him with amusement. "The great nest is destroyed, certainly, and the creepers who are marching downwards, spreading the cold, to areas that was to their liking, are no more. but others may still dwell in the high places of the mountain where the snow never melts. She glanced up at the gaping hole in the roof, and as the heat continued to rise, so grows less in here. And as the heat continues to rise, so grows less in here. They'll be back to risking their lives to seal the hole again. It is their nature to try and extend their territory. The companions were sitting out of the way of the Bukshah, against the entrance to the wall. Already it seemed cooler in the cavern, though they all knew by now that the heat was far greater than they could feel. "I think the spring in the grove left a layer on our skin and clothes that protected us from the heat," said Rowan. "The Bukshah's coats also. The passage through the Vale of Horrors sharpened their horns so that they could be ready to dig their food." Sharan shook her head in wonder. "And the water from the spring protected us from the heat to come. It's as though they were guided to follow the path they took." "They were guided, I'm sure of it," said Rowan. "Not by magic, but by an ancient instinct. From the earliest days. The Bukshah herd must have come to this cavern to feed in the winter, so every year the cavern roof was clear, the ice creepers retreated, and balance was kept." "Then how did the first cold time come?" asked Norris. "Or was that just a legend after all?" "Oh no," said Rowan somberly. "It really happened, I'm sure. I didn't think it happened because the people of the Valley of Gold... I think it happened because the people of the Valley of Gold decided to build fences to keep the Bukshah confined all year round." "But why?" Zeal demanded. "Why would they do such a thing? They must have known what the Bukshah did in the cavern. The mountain was not forbidden to them as it was to the travelers." Rowan sighed. "I suspect we can never be sure that the people had discovered that the hotter the cavern became, the more pressure below increased, the more swiftly the secret river of gold flowed. They thought only of the beauty and the power of the gold. They forgot that the mountain had needs as well. And so the first cold time came. The fools. At last they realized what they had done and corrected it. They would not tell the travelers. No wonder they were ashamed." Rowan sighed. "I'm ashamed also, for not seeing that there must have been a reason why the Bukshah always tried to stray in the winter. The Bukshah are wise, not stupid, I knew that. Yet I didn't try to understand them. Instead, like all keepers of the Bukshah before them, I coaxed them back into the field with their food kept to feed them. Through the cold months, often I wondered how they survived before we even came to the valley. Now I know." Zeal frowned. "But when the Valley of Gold was destroyed at last, the stairway and the cavern were buried by the landslide caused by the devil trees. The Bukshah could not have come here to feed after that." "No," said Rowan. "Through all those years they must have turned away disappointed and returned home, or with only leaves from the grove to fill their belly. Then we came to the valley, built fences as the people of the Valley of Gold once had, and began to feed the beasts in the winter. So though their instincts to go to the mountain remained, the urgent need for food was not there. They were content to keep their way. And all the while, little by little, the ice creepers' seals were growing thicker in the cavern roof, and the mountain was becoming colder," Zeal said. "And the creepers bred more and more, creating more cold, and the winters grew longer and more terrible by the year." Despite the heat, Sharan drew her cloak more closely around her now. "So if the people of Rin had not settled in the valley and begun feeding the Bukshah, the herd would have all died out," exclaimed Norris. At last, the whole land would have perished." Fazil's voice somber at this point. "As it is, the Bukshah survived. To lead us here, to show us what had to be done." She glanced at Rowan thoughtfully. "It was a fortunate chance, it seems, that your people came, with fences and crops and storehouses, and their ability to survive the cold in the center." Rowan wondered, though. Fortune or chance, or something else. "Rowan, what did you see before you ran and let the Bukshah into the cavern?" Norris asked abruptly. "You wouldn't tell us before. Will you tell us now? Did you see the future? Did you see all of this? He waved his hand at the feeding Bukshah. Rowan shook his head and slowly climbed to his feet. He knew it was time. Time to solve the last mystery. Time to share what he thought he knew he had been unable to speak. What he thought he knew. He had been unable to speak of it for a while. Urgent action was needed, even after he had kept his silence, hugging the precious secret to himself as if airing it might injure or destroy it. If there's no proof nor trace, it would only be my word, he thought, the word of a dreamer, easily put aside and explained away. If there is nothing else, how can I bear it? But with his companions following closely behind, he began to thread his way through the Bukshah, making his way to the shadowy corner where he had seen his last vision. In the corner lay in darkness, keeping its secrets. He stopped a little way from it to light a torch, but his hands were trembling so much that he couldn't manage. Glancing at him curiously, Zeal took the torch from him and lit it herself. The flame flared up. They approached the corner, and there in a nest of dusty bones lay a long wooden box. Why, Sharan! Exclaimed Norris. You've left the silks! But his voice trailed off as he saw Sharan still clutched in her arms the box she had carried from Rin. Rowan knelt before the tangles of bones and put his hands upon the box. The wood was iron hard, preserved by the steady dry heat of the cavern. The catch fell away from the lid as he opened it, and what he saw inside made his heart pound. It was a shallow tray holding a clutter of tiny glass jars in every color of the rainbow, and lying atop the jars, a scrap of parchment. He lifted the parchment out. It was covered in weak, scraggling writing, and he read the words aloud. My friends, you must know how it was when you return, and so I write these words. Fliss is too weak to do more. Bronn escaped the Zebak attack and ran back to warn us. He arrived in 2 days, despite his injuries. Following the plan, Bronn, Fliss, and I took the treasure, left plentiful food for the horses, and followed the beasts on their secret way from the valley of the Bukshah into the mountain heart. Once we were safe here, we kept good watch. Every day we expected you to return, either driven by Zebak whips or blessed free. You did not come. Rowan's voice faltered. What is this? Breathed Norris hoarsely. I do not understand. Who? Be still, Norris, hissed Zeal, her face intent. Rowan swallowed the lump in his throat and read on. At the end of the winter, the Bukshah left the mountain heart, but we remained. From afar we saw the new crops bloom in our valley, and the sorrow we alone could see its beauty. Once again Rowan stopped. This was almost too much for him to bear. He could guess what that new crop was. Sweet-smelling bushes loaded with fruits, bushes from the berries that they'd brought down from the mountains. The unknowing writer had little realized what evil disguised in that beauty. Had not known from what these pretty little bushes sprouted foul, flesh-eating trees. His companions would be waiting, breathless. He forced himself to continue. A little time afterwards, we saw that some dread illness had befallen the horses and birds, for they lay still in the streets. Fearing a Zebak plot to tempt us out of hiding, we retreated to the cavern. A few nights later, there was a fearful thundering, and the ground shook, and when we arose, we found that the gates were dark and sealed by rock. They were in here when the devil trees erupted from the earth and caused a landslide, Zeal said grimly. They were trapped. She looked down at the pathetic pile of bones and clenched her fist. Rowan took a deep breath and read on. Many weeks have passed since then. Bronn has labored mightily to free us, but even his great strength cannot move the barrier. Our food and water are long gone. We are dying. But the treasure is safe, and we are together. This is comfort for us. We grieve for you, our friends, but our hearts tell us that someday we will find a way to return, for the land will call you, and you will hear. And when you return, you will open the mountain's heart once more, so that the Bukshah can enter as they must. Then you will find us, and lay us at last in the good earth beneath the open sky where we long to be. We leave you with our blessing. Evan of the Bukshah. Evan of the Bukshah, Zeal breathed. She had tears welling in her eyes. The first tears Rowan had ever seen her shed. He put down the parchment and put his hand back into the box and took out the tray that held the tiny jars, laying them carefully aside. There was a deep cavity beneath the tray, and it was filled with rolls of silk. With a cry, Sharan threw herself down with trembling hands and reached into the box and took out the roll that lay on top. Tenderly she unrolled it. Blue, white, and gray, a long line of people trekking across the white snow, following a burnt black path. "It's the same," Norris whispered, his face filled with fear. "It's the silk you painted, Sharan." "No," she said quietly. "It is far, far older than that. See the faded colors and—" Her slender finger pointed at the Bukshah standing in the snow. "See, Norris, my painting showed the Bukshah fenced, but the people of the Valley of Gold had torn down their fences long before this was painted, leaving the Bukshah to roam free. The keeper of the silk, bliss, painted only truth as we are bound to, and the work is beyond compare." As Norris, Zeal, and Rowan watched in awe, Sharan unrolled another silk and another and another. The silks were frail as gossamer, but the colors were still livid, and shapes still spoke. The wise woman leading her people through the early snows to the battle on the coast. The Zebak army attacking on the plains, fierce and unexpected. An injured man, eerily resembling Norris, escaping and staggering away. That same man leaning on a long stick, telling the news to two figures in a valley paradise where paths were paved with gems. Miniature horses wandering around, and golden owls with emerald eyes watching every door. 3 figures wearing fur cloaks following Bukshah herds up the steep stone towards the great mountain. The people of the Valley of Gold did receive the traveler's call, Zeal said in wonder. They set out for the coast with the messengers, leaving only the keeper of the Bukshah and the keeper of the silks behind. But on the journey they were attacked by the Zebak. They were captured and marched on the coast, loaded into ships and taken away into slavery across the sea. Zeal shook her head. The Marison travelers were in hiding. They never knew. No one knew. Until now. But Norris's eyes wide. But that means that... It means that the people of the Valley of Gold were our ancestors, Sharan whispered, unable to take her eyes from the silk. It means that this land is not new to us at all. It is our place. It has been all along. A rich, varied people, big and small, strong and gentle, disappeared, said Zeal, trying to take it all in. Centuries later, a band of tall, sober warriors, slaves with no memory of their past, arrive on the Maris shores. How could anyone think that they were one and the same? I think Ogden did, Rowan said, or suspects at least. He knows more tales of the Valley of Gold than anyone alive. I would say that one thing he knows is that I would say that one of the things he knows is that history there was kept painted on stripes of silk. And as Zeal and Norris and Sharan bent down once more to pick up the ancient treasures, Sharan unrolling one by one, Rowan picked up the scrap of parchment, touching the scrolled words gently. We have returned, Evan of the Bukshah, he said softly. We have found a way, just as you knew we would. And so it was that Rowan, Zeal, Sharan, and Norris left the Bukshah to their feast and came down from the mountain, carrying far more than they had carried at the beginning of their journey. They now carried 2 boxes of silk instead of 1. They carried knowledge that filled their hearts to bursting, and they carried the bones of the 3 who had perished in the cavern, Ron the warrior, Fliss the keeper of silk, and Evan the keeper of the Bukshah. They looked so like us, our ancestors, Sharan asked Rowan, quietly as they walked together. Very like, he said. So alike that I thought I was seeing our future, but we were only treading in their footsteps. And what of the people of the shadow, the starving ones we saw outside the cave? Were they... Rowan shivered under the sunlight. I think they were far, far older, he said reluctantly. I think they were... I think they were some of our people who had lived through the first cold times. Again he shivered. Memories of those familiar, tortured faces still haunted him. Sharan bit her lip. And for a long time they walked in silence, before at last she spoke again. Rowan, Sheba told you that only you could lead the quest. Have you thought why that is? Rowan nodded. Because I am the keeper of the Bukshah, and love and trust the beasts as they love and trust me. Because I am a dreamer, and the medallion would accept me. But I have much practice in thinking new ways to solve problems. He swallowed. And because you, Norris, and Zeal are my friends, and would follow, he added in a low voice. But you were all needed too, if this quest was to succeed. Sharan bowed her head. I was wondering, she said, if part of the reason Norris and I were called was that we were like the other two, the two long ago, just like you were like Evan. Yes, Rowan said hesitantly. Perhaps it was so because you and Norris represent the other halves of the people of Rin, and I was the bridge between the two. And I? Asked Zeal, dryly moving up beside them. What was my part? You stood for the travelers, the Maris, and perhaps even the Zebak too, said Rowan. You were the witness. The way was long and full of hardship, but the companions were filled with happiness. For all around them the snow was melting, and the land was awakening after the cold winter. As they reached the place where the water flowed down to Rin from the mountaintop, they came upon 3 figures kneeling to fill their flask. John, Gilla, and Alan. Rowan stared at them in disbelief. The 3 were at the pool and looked up, their faces broke into smiles of pure joy. With a cry, Gilla, Rowan's mother, flew into Rowan's arms. Alun and John followed quickly. Soon the 4 companions were all part of a joyous circle. How can you be here? How would you know that it was safe to return? Well, we did not, said Alan cheerfully. Quite the reverse, actually. We thought we were tramping into the jaws of death, in fact. When Alan said that he'd seen Zeal overhead speeding to Rin, we feared something new and grave had happened, John said. We could not go on. We had to return. Marley and Alan too. They're fretting back at the village with Lan and Brondon. We came to find you, to help if we could, though now it seems there's no need. Lan? Brondon? Rowan asked eagerly. Are they... Both are well, Alan said. Brondon's still very weak, and recovering, though when she finds out what old Lan made bonfires with... Sorry. Let me try that again. Brondon's still very weak, but recovering. No, when she finds out that old Lan made bonfires with the village's whole supply of furniture, she might have a relapse. But, busy times ahead for her. Rowan glanced at Zeal. Old, useless wood? He murmured. Zeal shrugged. Tables and chairs meant nothing to Zeal. And by the way, Rowan, Alan went on, Sheba says to tell you that the medallion she gave you may look like a base metal, but it's actually made of pure gold. She expects it back the moment she returns. She says that you could not take her place in 1,000 years, whatever you might happen to think. I'm glad to hear it, Rowan said with feeling. How could you waste your time with nonsense about furniture and Sheba, Alan, scolded Gilla. The cold time is ending. We can see proof of that all around us. Somehow these brave young ones have saved us all. But how? How? She turned to Rowan, her tear-stained cheeks flushed with happiness and pride. Tell us, she begged. What happened on the mountain? What did you discover that changed so much so quickly? Where are the Bukshah? Rowan's heart was too full to speak, and in any case he hardly knew where to begin. They will tell us in their own time, no doubt, John said calmly, putting his hand on Rowan's shoulder. We already know the most important thing. These 4 souls are safe. The long winter is ended, and our people can come home. Rowan exchanged glances with Norris, Sharan, and Zeal. He thought of all they had to tell. He thought of the sad, small bundle he carried with him, and the place where he would bury it with honor under the great tree of Rin. He thought of the suffering, grief, mistakes, and wastes of centuries. He then thought of the future and smiled. Yes, Rowan said. At last the people truly can come home. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the saga of Rowan of Rin. All right. That was an epic conclusion. I've gone way over time because I wanted to finish that, but oh boy, my God, that was so good. I'm 100% satisfied with the outcome of that. I mean, just the fact that it was like, oh, I was just lost for words. So I love, like I said here earlier on as well, I think, yeah, by Vortaria. I love how it ties together the past, the present, the future. It's seeded stuff, or it's at least played on stuff from quite a way away in the series and stuff, and it's answered all the questions. It's tied that all together. I love the like dichotomy between the past, the present, and the future. How like all the visions were kind of like not actually their future, but actually these other guys who bared resemblance to them. You know, it was so beautiful and so wonderful, and I love the ending. It wasn't something violent. I was so worried. I thought for the longest time I thought the whole herd was going to be sacrificed to the dragon, or like something horrible was going to happen, because like I said, the author had set us up to be prepared for grief quite heavily throughout this, and I just like the whole fact that everything from the sharpening of the stones and the horns to the losing weight so that they can get through the like narrow tunnels and stuff like that, everything was like just part of this journey that the Bukshah took to like clear up the mountain and allow the cycle of the seasons. Man, that is so amazing. I mean, as you guys know, I do a lot of TTRPGs and D&D stuff. I guarantee you that I will be going back and adding some really cool, like kind of almost symbiotic biodome relationship kind of thing inspired by this. It was so good. I mean, there is still death. There is still, of course, the previous guys who unfortunately got, like, you know, starved to death here. That was very unfortunate. But, you know, at least they got a peaceful... at least they get, like, kind of put to rest and stuff like that. So yeah. Hey, Everyday Adventurer. Welcome in. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for first-time chatter. Good to see you. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to say goodnight. For those of you who are enjoying the rest of Easter, please continue to do so. I hope that you have an amazing rest of your weekend. For those of you like myself who are calling it an evening, then I hope that you also truly have an amazing evening. Let's see. Do we have anyone that is up and around to raid? We do not. Yes, we do not. But that is okay, because we are just going to say farewell then tonight. Guys, stay safe, stay wonderful. We will be back in like 9 hours or less, probably 7 hours, I think. Hold on, wait. 12:30, 1:32, 7.5 hours. Boom, there it is. We'll be back in 7.5 hours for our Curse of the Crimson Throne game, so do stick around for that when we come back to it. My name is Game. This is my place. This is my face. Give us a follow if you want to hang out. Come check us out on Discord, where you can ask all your D&D and TTRPG related questions. We'll see you guys soon. Have a safe one, and till we meet again, as always. Oh, wait, sorry, before I go, we will be doing DAG reads again. I might go on a bit of a break depending on where we're at, because I will be taking so basically in 3 weeks I'm going to be off, so I might find a short story to read. We'll see. I haven't decided. So watch the Discord. Watch the space. I will make something happen for the DAG reads slot. But yes, hopefully it'll be something cool, something fun. something quirky, because I've got a couple of other books that I really want to read. But yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Stay safe, stay wonderful, and as always, from me to you, game hard or die trying. Bye, everyone.